Well, good afternoon and welcome to H360 Live. My name is Dave Duplay, and joining me here in the studio this afternoon, as always, is my colleague from Healthy h360, Courtland Long. Courtland, how are you today?
I'm well, Dave. How are you?
Good. We're getting some crummy weather today here in New York, the rain and the humidity.
Yeah, but it's okay. It'll get better.
It'll get better. Well, we've got an interesting show for you today. We have Lou-Ellen Barkan coming on the show. She is the president and CEO of the Alzheimer's Association New York City chapter. They are doing some really wonderful things over there for patients and caregivers. So excited to have her on in about 5 minutes. But Courtland, as always, we've come across an interesting article this week, and I think it's appropriate for the show. And it centers around the importance of mental fitness. You know, we work out quite a bit and we walk a lot being in Manhattan, but this is about mental fitness, which is equally as important as the physical fitness, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. So what do we know about this article?
Well, you know, people's lives are really busy, and because of that, it can be difficult to maintain a healthy state of mind. There are many distractions, from staying on top of bills to work deadlines and even managing your children or your spouse's schedule. Because of this, it can be tough to maintain healthy habits, and this is a major issue for students as well. They're often stressing over homework projects and other due dates, and this can lead to some bad habits, which also can cause weight gain and even migraines.
It can, and you know, the article suggests that you don't have to be a Jeopardy champion or have a high IQ to exercise your mind. There's some little things that you can do day to day that are really going to help you. Now, if you like the tips we're about ready to give you, you can chat to the right. We use the hashtag Real Stories and hope you do the same for us. So Courtland, these tips that you have, I'm very interested to hear about them. What do we have?
Well, this first one may seem a little counterintuitive, but it is to stop multitasking. I know, we all do it, but when you stop multitasking, it helps you improve your concentration, and not only that, it allows you to see the bigger picture.
Courtland,
yes.
Stop multitasking?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm probably a big offender of that.
Yes.
I multitask all day long. Sometimes 3 and 4 different things going on at the same time.
A lot of us do.
So now I would think that in multitasking, your brain is going from one task to the next. You have to shift, you have to regroup, you're focused on. I would think that would exercise your mind, no?
Well, it's a little bit the opposite, actually. So because you're shifting from one task to the next, you never really allow your brain to focus on one thing. So when you get to something, it might take your brain about 20 minutes to actually fully gain that level of concentration that you need to complete the task.
Okay, so on a grading scale, I'm probably D minus, F plus in that multitasking area. I hope you have some more tips because I'm getting a little worried now.
I do, and you might be a little bit better at these. The next one is to be positive. The way in which you talk to yourself, involves some strengthening of the neural pathways. So when you talk to yourself in a positive way, it brings your self-confidence, your well-being, and your satisfaction, your personal satisfaction, to a higher level.
You know, I have not earned the nickname Mr. Positivity for nothing. I really haven't. I don't necessarily talk to, well, yes I do actually, because I work late into the evening. I'm usually by myself, and I have these long conversations, but if I think back, they're all very positive. So on the grading scale, I would say I'm probably an A minus to a B plus there.
Well, I'm glad to hear that things are evening out.
Things are looking up. You've got to give me another one because my grade point is slowly creeping up. We got to get it up there.
Let's see if we can get you up to an A.
Okay.
So this final one is to break your routine. Now this doesn't have to be, major things. When you try new foods or travel to new places, that helps to expand your horizons and can even improve your memory.
Okay. I'm feeling really good right now because I don't have a routine.
Great.
Right? I don't have one of these jobs where I come in and I do the same thing day after day.
That's right. Yeah.
My day unfolds when I get out of bed in the morning, usually around 4:30. I'm usually in the office by 6, checking emails, doing my thing. So I do not have this routine. On a grading scale, I'm probably off the charts here. I'm going to give myself an A plus. So if we think back, right, stop the multitasking, didn't do so well there. Mr. Positivity, I'm doing good there. And break the routine, I'm a rock star. There, as one of my favorite songs, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Do you know who sang that?
Oh, I think it was Meatloaf.
It was Meatloaf. Yeah, fantastic, right? Okay, so let's wrap this up, because now if we do a couple of things, right? If we play some games, if we do some crossword puzzles, or even read, these kind of things are going to help keep our mind exercised, right?
They will help keep your mind exercised, but also you have to make sure that you're changing up the exercises that you're doing. So doing the New York Times crossword puzzle every day, while I'm sure it will be challenging, you need to be changing that up with some Sudoku and chess and some other things as well.
Good point. Well, I can't wait till Lou-Ellen comes in here, because I am going to ask her what she thinks about this article, because I know they're doing some really interesting things over at her office around mind stimulation as well as exercise. So I can't wait to bring that up.
Absolutely.
Okay, so as always, we sent our interns out on the streets of New York to see just what our New Yorkers know about mind fitness and a little bit of Alzheimer's and dementia mixed in there. So here's what they had to say. You want to watch the video?
I do.
Okay, Matthew, would you roll the tape?
Many people have heard of physical fitness, but have you heard of mental fitness?
Yes, I have heard of it.
So can you explain to me what is mental fitness?
Well, I think mental fitness is kind of going beyond the textbook learning that we get in school.
No, I don't think I know what mental fitness is. I know of like some mental disorders, and I don't think I practice it.
Yes, I have.
No.
Do you think that something simple as traveling or trying new foods will help you improve your memory?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Thinking about it, like you might try a food that you have never had before, and it might have some type of antioxidant in it or some type of something in it that triggers mental fitness, I guess.
Yes, I believe that the more you experience, the better it is to retain new memories.
I think that it can help, expand your thought process and probably help your memory.
I don't really know, but I think anything new is possible to help.
Do you know anyone who's diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease?
Unfortunately, I do. One of my best friends in high school, his dad actually has it now. I hope he's doing all right, though.
I do, yes. Both of my grandparents, my mother's side.
No.
Yes, my grandmother.
Your grandmother?
Yeah.
Do you think that performing mental fitness exercises will help deter your Alzheimer's disease or even slow the progression of someone who has Alzheimer's?
I think for someone who does not yet have it, I think it's a great idea to. My mom, I always tell her to do exercises like crossword puzzles and Sudoku and things like that when she has a moment, so that her mind is always working, because she's already really forgetful.
I believe that, if people practice mental health fitness, that it could hopefully, lower the diagnosis rates.
Yes, I think so.
Why?
I think that they just need to rejuvenate their mental capacity and help continue to engage it. And Alzheimer's definitely just deteriorates your function. So anything that really engages it would help.
Well, Courtland, what did you think about the video?
Oh, that was a great video, and I loved that although people may not have known they were talking about mental fitness, they did know that some of these games that we were referring to could help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it seemed like most of the people that we talked to had someone in their family with dementia or Alzheimer's, or knew somebody close to them. Very sad.
Very sad indeed.
Yeah, the one woman actually, what did she say? Both of her grandparents on her mother's side suffer from Alzheimer's.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
So, well, once again, our interns did not disappoint, and our New Yorkers on the street did not disappoint either. They know an awful lot about mind fitness and Alzheimer's, which is a good thing. Now we're going to shine the spotlight square on Alzheimer's. Coming into the studio, sitting here now, is Lou-Ellen Barkan. Lou-Ellen is the chairman and CEO, president and CEO of the Alzheimer's Association New York City chapter. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It is great to have you here. Before we get started, I've got a couple of things I just want to share with our viewers on your association. So, as I mentioned, Lou-Ellen is the president and CEO of the New York chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. She leads a 56-plus person, $9 million not-for-profit located right here in Manhattan, doing a phenomenal job. The organization provides free programs and services for the many thousands of New Yorkers who are suffering from Alzheimer's and other related dementias, as well as their families, and this is important, their families and their caregivers. They are doing some great things, have some great programs. The chapter's diversity and outreach programs have extended to include African American, Chinese, Latino programs, as well as programming for the Orthodox Jewish and Russian communities. Lou-Ellen, you are doing a fantastic job over there, if I must say.
Thank you so much.
You have been a friend to us for a long time. You also know my mother suffers from Alzheimer's, so I have a very close connection to what you're doing and what your association, your foundation is doing. So great work there. We have so many things to ask you, so let's just jump right in.
Yes, well, thank you again for coming in. We're really excited to hear your reaction to our opening segment here. But before we get to that, can we hear a little bit about your history and your background?
I've had an interesting background. I started my life as a mom. I spent my early part of my life taking care of my kids. I now have 4 grandchildren. And after that, I went to work on Wall Street for a number of years. That was very exciting and fun. And then in the first term of the Giuliani administration, I went to work at City Hall. And I spent a number of years with Mayor Giuliani, working to help New York City become a better place for all of us to live. Enormously satisfying. Frankly, I got hooked on public service, and out of that came my opportunity to work in the not-for-profit sector. I wanted something, and like you, Dave, my father had Alzheimer's. I wanted something I really cared about personally, so I could talk about it publicly and write about it publicly and make a real difference. And so I went back out of retirement, and I took this position about 11 years ago, and it's been incredibly satisfying. We are helping people all over New York, and frankly, many of them have no place else to go.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about it, and really privileged to be in this position at this stage of my career.
Yeah. So let's go back. You heard our interesting article, right?
Yeah.
Mind Fitness. And so I know you and your team, you're doing a lot around that. Number one, what did you think of the article that we featured? And tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing over at the association around maybe not only mind fitness, but physical fitness as well.
The 2 things that are interesting, the article was very interesting. And I would say, these kinds of articles are like motherhood and apple pie. There's nothing in them that's wrong. You can't go wrong by doing any of the things that you described. And certainly having a positive attitude is a great way to lead their life anyway. But there are 2 things that we're not focused on that I think are really important. There's only a little bit that the scientists know about what we can do to help our cognitive awareness, cognitive health. And one of them is physical fitness, which we know about. We know it's better to eat correctly and get exercise than to lie and watch TV and eat mashed potatoes. That's sort of a given. So we want people to be physically active. But the other thing they talk about is social engagement, mental engagement, some of which you guys talked about a minute ago. But what they're talking about is person-to-person engagement. What's interesting about this experience for us, by example, is as you talk to me and ask me a question, I really don't know what you're going to ask. And my little brain has to kind of operate to understand what it is, come up with a response, deliver that response, and then wait for you to respond. That's a very high level of cognitive activity.
Yeah.
The other thing that is interesting is when you do something you're deeply engaged with. So people always say, well, you should learn a language. I'm terrible at languages, and the minute you try to teach me a language, my mind goes to sleep. But I would say I'm interested in other things, certain kinds of science. I'm actually interested in mushrooms, and I find mycology very interesting. So if I'm in the field and I'm looking at different mushrooms, I have my little mushroom book, that I find enormously interesting. And if I'm with somebody I can talk about it at the same time, also very interesting. So I think we tell people all the things you described, plus we want them to do it with another person. Get out there. Don't be home watching TV,
That's right.
doing puzzles by yourself and reading books by yourself. Try to get out there. You read books, join a book club.
Yep.
Really engage, and I think that's really the key.
Yeah, you could go play chess in the park, for example. In New York we have all these parks with chessboards everywhere. That would be a great way.
Having a dog is a great idea. I mean, I love my dog for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I love my dog is every morning I go out and walk my dog. And I meet so many interesting people, and we have fascinating conversations. And I may never see them again, but for that hour and a half that we're out there together, I'm not only walking the dog and getting my exercise, but I'm also talking to people and getting that mental stimulation. Very, very important.
Now let's shift gears for a minute, because you guys over there have this early stage center, and there's no other, I believe, like it in the world. How did that early stage center get started, and what are some of the services that you offer to our friends here in the 5 boroughs of Manhattan?
It's such an important question. So few people know anything about this. I'm grateful for the chance to talk about it. When I started my job 11 years ago and I first came into the office and I was new at all the work, I found a group of people sitting there 2 or 3 mornings a week, sort of having coffee and talking. I had no idea who they were. They weren't our staff members. They weren't my normal support group members. So I asked my staff, who are these folks? And it turned out they were people in the early stage of Alzheimer's or related dementia. They were coming to a program, and they were sitting in the lobby reading the paper and drinking coffee because honestly they just want to be like you and me. They want to go to Starbucks and sit with their buddies, but they're really not able to do quite that anymore. They're feeling uncertain, insecure. So this sort of stable environment gave them a sense of normalcy and a place to go. So when we built our new space on the 3rd floor at 360 Lexington Avenue, we had dedicated 5,000 square feet to an early stage center. And one large piece of that is a sort of community room. It's not it's not daycare. It's not intended for people to sit all day. It's intended for just what we described. Before a program, people come in early and they have their coffee and they talk to their buddies and they read the paper and talk about the news, but they feel secure and safe, and they feel also that they're getting that social engagement. And no one else has a place for them like that.
So if you want to learn more about the Early Stage Center and what programs and services, Lou-Ellen has a helpline. It's a 1-800 number. I want to give that to you. It's 800-272-3900. You can call. Someone's going to answer the phone. They're going to answer your questions. They're going to help you out. Courtland, what else do we have?
Well, I want to know, is the staff at the Early Stage Center specifically trained for early stage, and how is that different from maybe being trained for mid-stage or late stage?
We do a tremendous amount of work with really 2 populations, really 3 populations. 1 are family members who have somebody with the disease in the family, and 2 are professional caregivers and people who are in the medical field, and 3 are people with the disease. We mostly deal with the first 2 categories. We have a very limited population of people with the disease, and they are almost all in the early stage. The difference is that people who are in that stage of the disease are often still able to get around. They're able to talk. Very often you would not even know, frankly, that they had been diagnosed, but they've often been let go from their jobs or selected to leave their jobs. They really have nowhere to go. And the staff is trained to come up with programs that help them be together, socialize, if you will, right, in a way that's productive for them and also entertaining and interesting, that makes them want to come back. The other thing the staff is able to do, which is a special kind of training, is to help the families and the individuals through the continuum of the disease. So when they start with the early stage staff, they can then transition through the folks who are dealing with people in the middle and late stages, right through to the end of the disease, which could last, as I think you know, as long as 25 years. The average length of this disease is about 8 to 12 years. So we can see families for a long, long time and help them make decisions. These people on the front end, they're looking at you today, looking at the client, spending more time with the client than the family. And then as people progress, we spend more time with the family than the client.
So a couple of questions. Now, I've been over to your offices, and there's a lot going on. And of course, there's so many people that are taking advantage of the good services here in New York. But what interests me is your staff, your programs, it's not a cookie cutter approach. You are very specialized. You cater to the needs of that patient individually, their caregiver, and their family members. How do you pull that off?
It's so frustrating when we think about this competition in the world of diseases, you know, that one disease is better than the other or harder than the other. The thing about Alzheimer's that distinguishes it is that no one does it alone. You know, my mother had breast cancer, and when she was diagnosed on that day, she could have had surgery, recovered, put a pink ribbon on, and walked in the park, and didn't need me to do that. When someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, on the day they are diagnosed, they need a person to be their advocate. They need somebody to go to the doctor with them. They need a caregiver somebody who is their sidekick. That distinguishes the disease. It's really a different model. And the programs that we have and the services that we provide are unique because we know that if you've seen one case of Alzheimer's, you've seen one case of Alzheimer's. Every situation is so different. Every family dynamic is so different. So our social workers are trained differently because they're dealing with a whole constellation of people who are involved with the care of one person and dealing with all the distinguishing things about your family that make it different from my family, make it different from your family. It's very complicated work, and we have to do it in a very interpersonally, what's called high touch, very high touch work.
Yeah. Second question, the family members. How do you somebody is diagnosed, a grandparent, let's say, and you've got young children in the family, the young grandchildren. How do you really educate the younger children in the family about the patient journey and what is possibly going to happen to their grandparent without really scaring these children? I know you guys do a lot of work with the family. What's your experience in that?
You know, we have a standing joke in our house. It's not a new joke, and I didn't make it up. It's like, you know, what my grandchildren and I have in common, and we say a common enemy. And, you know, my children sit in the middle, sort of, you know. So we're all sort of in this together. But my grandchildren, you have a special bond with your grandparents. Not everybody, but many lucky people really do. I know I certainly did. And so when a grandparent becomes ill, it's terrifying for children. Not just the fact that someday in the late stage they may not remember the individual's name, but sometimes earlier than that they may lash out. There may be some emotion. People get agitated. And children are terrified. So the really important thing is to sort of explain to children that this is the disease talking, not grandma, and really educate them on the fact that grandma is ill. It's a different kind of illness than some physical illnesses, which are more apparent physically. Sometimes this is transparent physically, and children don't really understand it. The families that do this very well are families that are willing to be open about it, willing to discuss it, willing to give children that information. And we have, years ago, we developed a kind of coloring book for children. What's wrong with grandma? To help children understand. There are these days a lot of children's books that deal with this because the disease, unfortunately, is so prevalent.
Yeah, and speaking about families that speak out,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, the Glenn Campbell family. We highlighted that documentary a couple episodes ago, and it was, you follow Glenn through the diagnosis and through his whole journey, and we see his family really step up and help him through the whole tour, which was wonderful to see. But what we don't see in that documentary is his immediate next steps after the diagnosis. So when someone is diagnosed with that, what should be their first, go-to?
Very often diagnosis is done by somebody who's not an expert. And we say to everybody, the most important first thing you have to do, absolutely, is get an expert diagnosis. It's an assessment that you get from your intern. I have a wonderful internist. I love him. He's a cardiologist, really. And the truth of the matter is that just happens to be his subspecialty. But he doesn't really know dementia. And so we have enormous, especially in New York City, but really throughout the country, there are wonderful Alzheimer's disease assessment centers. We're in some of the best hospitals in the country. We're real experts do the diagnosis. That is absolutely the most important thing. And if you were to call our helpline, right, the first thing that someone would say is, have you had an assessment by an expert in these diseases? And if not, that's your first step. Once you get that diagnosis, then depending on where you are and what people think you need, there are a series of things you'll do with your family, possibly with a professional caregiver. But until you have that first step, you can't take that first step.
Yeah, that's a great point. That 800 helpline, again, is 1-800-272-3900. Pick up the phone. If you know somebody, you're going to get great answers. You're going to get the help that you need. It's amazing. I go to a lot of your walks. I love attending them. I'm a big supporter. You seem to draw out a lot of celebrities that want to speak out on Alzheimer's. And it's really touching because years ago, it was something that wasn't talked about. It was a conversation for the back room, and through your efforts, you've brought the conversation to the front room, and celebrities are coming and speaking out. What do you see? I mean, why can't we find a cure? This is really frustrating to me that with all the people speaking out and all the advances in modern medicine, why can't we find a cure?
The brain is the last frontier. It's actually a very complicated organ. And because of the way it's organized in your body, it's actually designed to be cut off from a lot of other things so that your brain is not always affected by everything else that goes on, but it makes it that much harder to really understand. The bad news is it's taking us forever to find an effective therapy to cure Alzheimer's, to prevent it, or even to stop the progression. The good news is that because there are so many people who are projected to become ill, that every biotech, every university hospital, every big pharmaceutical and small pharmaceutical company is trying to work on this. So we've got enormous numbers of scientists in the field doing something, and I'm hopeful that there'll be that kind of moment. You know, science doesn't run the way we think it's supposed to. It's sort of not just iterative. What happens is that one day, all that information in your brain that you've been percolating, if you will, just sort of comes to somebody. And that's how you end up with penicillin from bread mold, or, you know, the things that Louis Pasteur did, you know, generations ago. There's that moment of epiphany, and we're sort of hoping that one of the scientists, one of the many working on this disease today, will sort of have that moment. So I'm optimistic, but I'm also cautious, because in the meantime, the most effective therapy for Alzheimer's is good caregiving. And so we have research to show that the effect of the disease is actually lessened dramatically with good caregiving. And so we want people to call that helpline number and get to us and let us help them get the right assessment and get the good care they need.
Okay, let's shift gears one last time. Caregiving. Now, my father is the caregiver to my mother. Still, my mother's still at home, but I've seen changes in my father. He's gaining weight. He's not taking care of himself like he should. What's the message here? I mean, caregiving is a full-time job.
Caregiving is the hardest job, I think, in the world. And for anyone who's even done it for a sick child, it's just, you know, it's a terrifying and exhausting experience. The truth of the matter is that unless a caregiver takes care of him or herself, they can't take care of someone else. So one of the messages that we send out loud and clear to the enormous numbers of caregivers that we talk to, again, you know, if you called a helpline and you said, I'm exhausted, we would suggest a day of respite so that you can take care of yourself. Go to the dentist. We have caregivers who need all kinds of medical care and haven't seen a doctor themselves in 5 years. People need to get exercise. They need to get out and socialize. We're really, and people do not experience this as if I'm neglecting my responsibility. This is your responsibility, is to take as good care of yourself as you do of the person you're caring for. That's how you're going to be able to do it. It's a hard message, and my own mom really struggled with this. I'm not sure she ever really overcame it, but I think that when I would take her to lunch, she would be worried the whole time, you know, about my dad. It's a hard message. I think it's up to the generation that you're in, the children, to help their parents understand this is okay, Dad, to go out and spend some time and take care of yourself a little bit. And we have programs at the office where we actually give people grants to get respite. People can have a day of respite. Very important.
Yeah, extremely important. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. A lot of good information. Once again, that 800 number is 1-800-272-3900. Call that helpline. You're going to get the answers you need. Well, Lou-Ellen, thanks for everything you do. Thanks for coming in. I'd like to thank the viewers and members at home for tuning in, and I would like to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthy0360.com, and our podcast is now available in the iTunes Store, and it's absolutely free. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. We use the hashtag RealStories when posting, and we'd like you to do the same to help us out. So on behalf of myself, Courtland Long, and everyone here at the Healthy0360 family, we hope you have a very pleasant afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.